Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for coming to the CALPADS regional updates. We do have the PowerPoint and resources box site in the chat, and it will be posted periodically, so you guys will be able to see it if you just are joining. We are probably going to go ahead and, well, we might be updating the link. So if you want to wait until after after this last meeting to upload the slides, that would be great. I think, Sean, we can go to the next slide. We do have Brandy presenting, as well as Sean, and of course, Angela, who's going to be giving us some tips and tricks for end of year. And other panelists, we've had Mary Nicely, our Chief Deputy Superintendent of Public Instruction. She has stopped by. She is very, very supportive of data and good quality data. So we're excited when she's able to drop into our trainings. Liberty Van Natten is our new director for the Educational Data Management Division, and she also comes with a plethora of data experience in data governance and in foster youth. I am Marianne Bjorkman. I'm the administrator in the CALPADS Operations Office. We also have Paula, my mentor, who has been here for a while and knows everything about CALPADS. We also have Martha, Rima, and Heather, who are also CALPADS gurus that will be able to support your questions as you ask them. This is our general agenda. And for those of you that are in special education teams, we'll probably be hitting your content in about a half an hour. So about 1:30, 1:35, go ahead, get some extra coffee or some lunch and then come back, because we're going to have some general updates first, which is going to be our end of year submission deadline updates. We're going to talk about CALPADS and statewide testing. We're going to talk about the new Summer EBT program, also a FERPA notification that will need to go out. Then we'll have the special education updates. We'll have end of year 1 through 3, cohort changes and reminders. And then CSIS will be doing some support tips and resources. We may have time for additional questions, but if we don't, today at 3 o'clock is the Q&A that CSIS hosts. So that will be just perfect timing, right? So if we don't get to your questions here, we can get to your questions over in the other Zoom. And now I think it's time for Sean to take it away. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Marianne. So yes, I will begin with our general updates. So first off, we have for our 23-24 end of year deadline. So as posted and the CALPADS calendar, it's been up there. It's been up there for a few weeks now. If you haven't noticed, we have the EOI deadline listed there for August 16th, 2024. It is critical that you certify by that EOI deadline. Okay, that is actually the recertification deadline. So there's the initial deadline and then there's the recertification. You must certify by that August 16th, 2024 deadline though. If you're able to certify earlier, as always, yes, do so. Never wait till the last minute. You want to cut down on that stress and anxiety. You also want to ensure, though, we want to give you enough time, though, and ensure that everyone that needs to review your reports are reviewing them. If you project manage and plan that timing out correctly, it will it'll make your life a lot easier. Also, please be very cognizant that in that November 2023 communication, we stated that the grad cutoff date, it still remains August 15th, just as in past years. Okay, so that 1 day difference, it is key to note it, because you do need to have all of your grads then submitted by August 15th with that date or before. And so that 1 day difference, it does, it's again, be cognizant of it, because you don't want to be entering in graduates on August 16th and then they are not showing up on your dashboard there. Also then, you want to be cognizant for guidance on how to report those students who are graduating after the end of the school year or summer graduates. We do have more information and flashes forthcoming for that too. And so that brings us right into the inclusion of your summer graduates and the future EOY deadlines. We do realize in that March 1st superintendent's letter that we posted that all students, they do have to have that graduation record by the summer of, I'm sorry, all summer graduates have to have that date of August 15th in prior year graduate counts and the rates in order to be counted. Okay, we do realize that we do need to move that EOY deadline up. And we will be doing that to align with the dashboard, but also our statutory requirements. Okay, we are still determining how to reconcile that data and continuing to include those summer graduates for the prior year. So we will again have additional information forthcoming for that. So just sit tight, please. For your statewide testing reminders, this is critical for right now. You are in state testing. That window opened up last month. Okay. Below in the very last bullet, we have the assessments system chart, which shows when those testing windows opened up. However, more importantly, you should have your own specific LEA calendar to know when those testing windows are. Okay, and the reason why you want to know those testing windows, because you need to be able to keep CALPADS up to date for information that is rolling over to ETS, TOMS, and CAS. So remember that nightly extraction from CALPADS ODS, it can take up to 48 hours for that information to be visible in TOMS. And so particularly, you are continuing that ongoing maintenance of your enrollment records, your information records, your program records, your CELA records, and your SWDs if applicable. Okay, I'm sorry, SWDS, I always forget the S. And Brandy reminds me. So your students with disabilities, ensuring that status is A1, eligible and participating, okay? That is going to allow your students to have those testing accommodations placed into TOMS. How does that testing accommodations get placed into TOMS? That is your testing coordinator. Okay, if you haven't had those conversations already and you don't know at what frequency or what cadence you guys are completing those items, start now. Okay. Also for the initial US enrollment date, okay, please continue to update. Please ensure that data is accurate. Your race and ethnicity is accurate as well. And then any information that is missing or non-matching in your information file, okay, those can all prevent students from being able to test accurately. Also, please remember not to pre-populate SENR exit dates, okay? And the reason why is because you want to ensure that student has completed their testing. And even if you're populating that date in early, then ETS is receiving what we call an exit file, and it can potentially drop those students in the middle of their testing. And then there's a STARS report that needs to get done, and a whole lot of back and forth, all while the student is simply maybe just trying to move schools, okay? But better yet, you're trying to continue to test them. So please be mindful of the guidelines, especially during the testing windows. And again, know when your testing windows are specifically. Please remember not to pre-populate your program end dates, okay? Especially for your 504 programs. You don't want to end a student's accommodations accidentally. So again, it goes back to knowing when your specific testing window is. Also, please remember to resolve all MIDs at least 2 business days prior to the student testing. This is critical. We are reaching out to LEAs that have a large number of MIDs, and by a large number, we mean 25 or more. Okay, that is key for us. And again, you just want to ensure that your student data is accurate. For MIDs, remember that you are using that SSID lookup tool to ensure that you're not creating duplicate records for students. For this slide, we have updated it if you attended one of the previous 3 shows, okay? And so for this one, it is particularly crucial for transitional kindergarten and kindergarten, okay, that are being reverted to preschool, okay? So our best guidance at this time is going to be to, one, ensure that you are enrolling your students correctly in your SIS prior to requesting that SSID. So again, ensuring that which grade level should this student actually be in? Okay. Again, that is not just based upon age. So take a look at the full record. So that way you know to move forward and how you're moving forward. If it is a preschool student, remember they do not require a SELA record. But if they are TK or KN, they do. And then possibly they may need to be initially LPAC tested, depending on what that HLS says. Also, if it is a special education student that is enrolling, please be mindful. And if you haven't already attended Brandy's wonderful webinar, please find the link here for creating and maintaining SSIDs for students with disabilities. Okay, it gives you a plethora of data as always. It's our wonderful Brandy that created it. So not only does she do a presentation for you, she gives you a chart for it as well. And it is robust, but it is specific to your students. And so knowing when that student should be preschool only, or when that student should be TK or KN. Also for statewide testing, we have an update for that RFEP status. And again, we have that nice little comment up top that says there is a flash forthcoming, okay? We are planning to release this information a little bit more in detail for you within that flash. Just sit tight and it'll be out shortly. We just have to go through our approval process. So in ensuring that your ELAS students in CALPADS, that they are submitted prior to May 31st, okay? We want to ensure that those students are being reclassified based upon the 22-23 summative LPAC or the alternative LPAC scores. It is always key to get your RFEP students in there as soon as possible. Okay, but again, mostly ensuring that they are the right status prior to that May 15th, 2024. And this is because your students' status is the status of EL and TOMS on or before May 31st, and who have not taken the summative LPAC or the summative alternative LPAC, because we don't want that to count against their participation rates. Okay, so again, this is where it goes back to that project managing and ensuring that you have all of your communication outlined. You have everyone that needs to be in the room, contributing to these conversations. And so your testing timelines will run a lot more smoothly, just your information of data. And when you're processing it, it will also run more smoothly. And you know when to keep what to keep up to date daily or weekly within the CalPAD system, but more importantly, within your SIS system too. Next, we have our statewide testing. There's a flash forthcoming for this, and I'll speak on this one for this slide and the next slide as well too. So the importance of inputting that that initial US school enrollment date for students. So we are talking about that field 2.36 in your SIM file, and it is particularly important for students that have that ELAS status, which goes into that SELA file for your English learner, plural, thank you. Your EL students who are in their first 12 months as of April 15th of the previous year of attending school in the United States are eligible for a one-time exemption from the ELA portion of the CASP assessment. So therefore, again, it is critical to make sure that you are populating that student U.S. initial enrollment date prior to the student's testing to avoid students being tested unnecessarily. Okay. Once they start that test, there is a different set of parameters. So making sure, again, that all of this information is going in prior to your students' testing. And this, again, this is why I speak to knowing when your testing calendars are. If you don't know those dates readily or you don't know where to find them, typically they are public facing and on your LEA's website. If you don't know where to find that, please go talk to your EL coordinator and find this information so that way you all can coordinate in your scheduling, and again, you can project manage. So continuing with that U.S. initial enrollment date for fall 1, LEAs, they received that fatal certification validation if this field was not populated for your EL students. Many students who were TBD on Census Day or EL who enrolled in an LEA after Census Day are missing a date in this field. Okay, that date does need to be inputted. So a fatal validation will be implemented for the 23-24 EOY3. So when you're seeing all of that information pop up for EOY3, it's because you didn't listen to us now and start to populate that information. Okay. It also means that you could have had students that were not supposed to be tested that actually got tested. Again, we'll have a flash that will summarize all of the current and the new validations for the U.S. school enrollment date. It will also identify strategies for ensuring this field is populated with quality data. And right now, I will kindly pass it over to our wonderful Paula Mishima, who will speak to our 2024 Summer EBT program. Before Paula takes it on, though, I do just want to be able to announce that remember that ISAC forms and completion, that was for pandemic EBT. Okay. And so since the pandemic has ended, that information is no longer required. We announced it at the October regionals, but I think some people may have missed over it. And so just don't confuse those two items together. And hopefully this will separate it out for you. And then I'll gladly pass it over to Paula.
Great. Thanks, Sean. Good afternoon, everybody. So there's going to be a very comprehensive flash coming out, hopefully shortly, giving you all the details you want about Summer EBT. So today I just wanted to kind of hit the highlights and just kind of give you some context for the program. Just, and plus this shows that with the work that you all do in terms of just populating and updating CALPADS, how the data is actually used in many different ways that directly benefit students. So the U.S. Department of Ag for many years have tried to figure out how best to ensure kids have food over the summertime. They've tried these aggregate summer programs where kids come together at a park maybe and so forth, but they have found that doesn't impact a lot of students. So with pandemic EBT, I guess one silver lining was they realized that doing the EBT distribution of benefits was one way to better ensure students had funding for meals over the summer. And so the pandemic summer EBT program is now a permanent summer EBT program. Okay, it's different than pandemic EBT, more similar to pandemic summer EBT, but there's still a few changes. The program, again, will be administered, or the lead agency is the California Department of Social Services. They're the lead agency for California, and the Department of Ed, we support them primarily by providing data to them, as well as communicating to schools through the food service folks. In CDE, our Nutrition Services Division is the lead division, and they have already been communicating with their food services partners locally. Okay, next slide. Okay, so one difference in terms of identifying eligible kids that will happen with Summer EBT is all kids who are already participating in a social services program such as CalFresh, CalWorks, or Medi-Cal will automatically receive benefits based on the data in the CDS system. Okay, so those are, for us, that mostly means the kids who are UCS directly certified, none of that data will come out of CalPADS. It will all come out of the CDSS system. And that's called Streamline Certified. Next slide. So the kids who will be identified as eligible outside of the Streamline Certified process are those with certain data in CalPADS. So any kid who's enrolled, who was enrolled or was enrolled at any point in time between July 1, 2023 and August 31st, 2024, so that's like a really big time frame, and they were enrolled in our school that was participating in the National School Lunch Program or School Breakfast Program. And they were individual students who were individually eligible anytime during that time period. And by that, we mean have in CalPADS a free or reduced price meal, a 181, 182 record, a migrant record, homeless record, or were matched sometime during that time frame to be a foster youth. So those two things don't have to overlap, meaning they could be enrolled in a NSLP participating school in 1 month and then become eligible through a FRPM record in another month. Those two don't have to align. As long as any student is both of those things during that pretty long time period, they will be eligible. And of course, if they're eligible through direct certification and they have no other information in CalPADS, they will also be eligible based on the CDSS data. Next slide. So in the flash, I kind of put up front just to highlight the tasks for you all, for the CalPADS folks. And really the task is to maintain CalPADS, which is something most of you are doing anyway. But the first poll from CalPADS, so for Summer EBT, is pretty early. It's March 29th. And so just ensure that your enrollments and exits are up to date in CalPADS, as well as those program records. Those of you, since everyone certified fall 1, mostly it's any new updates since fall 1. Note also that please keep, if anything changes for kids, it might be addresses. So make sure updated addresses are in CalPADS by March 29th. And after that, in subsequent polls, the address is not going to be used except perhaps for totally newly enrolled students. So you don't need to, you should keep the address up to date but for Summer EBT program purposes, that we're not going to be polling that address for any student who was in that first data poll in March. Okay, next slide. So after March 29th, beginning on March 30th, again, the task is simply ensuring that CalPADS is up to date all the way up through the end of the Summer EBT period, which is August 24th, August of 2024, August 31st. So you ensure that the new enrollments are there, and then also ensure that the program records for any kids who were previously enrolled to update those records. The one thing that's a little different about Summer EBT is that kids who enroll for the first time in a California school, so say that's in the 24-25 school year. So I'm mostly talking about kindergarten students here. So if your school starts, say August 15th, and you're enrolling students, those kindergarten students actually will be eligible for 23-24 Summer EBT benefits, as long as they're enrolling in a participating school and they're eligible via one of those program records. And the reason for that is that PEBT also had a childcare program where they funded younger kids basically for benefits, but Summer EBT does not have that. So I think U.S. Department of Ag is just trying to capture as many of those younger kids as possible into the Summer EBT program. That's why they will provide benefits to TK and kindergarten kids who are enrolling for the first time in the 2024-2025 school year. Next slide. So this slide just summarizes the dates that we're going to pull data from CalPADS. So just if you can ensure things are up to date by those dates, that's when we're going to pull the data out of CalPADS. The other thing I just want to emphasize is that CEP, unlike pandemic EBT, the Summer EBT program will require students enrolled in CEP schools or community eligibility program schools or provision 2 and 3 schools to be individually identified as eligible. In pandemic EBT, any kid enrolled in a CEP school was eligible. Now it's any kid enrolled in a CEP school that has in most cases, a 181, 182 record, which is based off an alternative income form. So in California, we're kind of lucky that we actually had this form in place already, and we received a waiver from USDA to use that form in 2024, and we're applying for the waiver again in 2025. Most other states are having to create a new Summer EBT application. California will likely have to do that in the future, at which point we would swap out that application with the alt income form for those kids who are enrolling in an SLP participating school. So just that clarification. Other than that, that is it for Summer EBT. I don't know if there were any questions in the chat. We do not. What we do with the pandemic EBT cards that we receive for students that no longer enrolled in our district and we don't have a new address or school where the students are now attending, some have moved to Mexico and out of state. You know, those kind of questions, the bigger flash will provide that. And also there's a lot of other resources that you can look to. But bottom line is, you know, it's those cards at some point will get expunged, and the Summer EBT cards in particular are expunged pretty quickly. Paula, if students turn 18 at some point and graduate in 2023 but are receiving free lunch, will their parents get Summer EBT? The kids we're going to pull out are any kids who actually turn during that long period between July 1, 2023 and August 31st, 2024. If they turn actually, I think it's age 22, during any of that time period and they're enrolled, that family will get it, but the student has to be still enrolled. What address should we use for homeless student? Again, that will be covered in the flash. Similarly to the pandemic EBT, we ask that you input, if you're an IRC, put the IRC school address or the school or the district address. It really depends on your district and how you're going to distribute the cards to the homeless kids. But there's more information about homeless kids in the flash that's coming out. For students that are pre-enrolled for 24-25 school year, we don't submit enrollments until school starts in August. Yes, that's okay. In fact, that's better. You should, when school start is when the enrollment should be there. What if there are only free or reduced price for 1 week in the school year? If their application was approved and they have a 181 record in CalPADS, they will be eligible. Okay, next slide. I think I have the next slide also. This is mostly heads up. Your superintendent, hopefully in the next few weeks, will be receiving a letter from the department asking that districts include in their notification to parents as required by FERPA this particular use of CalPADS data. I think we've talked about CCGI in the past, but CCGI is an initiative under the broader Cradle to Career initiative. It's scaling out statewide an existing CCGI program where eventually all high school kids in the state will have an account that they can go into, and in that count it tracks their progress in terms of courses completed, enrolled in and completed, and you can track your whether or not you're meeting the course requirements to get into CSU or UC, and it provides a lot of other guidance and support for kids as they kind of move through high school and into a college and career. So to create those accounts, CCGI requires enrollment data and some basic demographic data of students from CalPADS. And so this notification is just notifying families that CALPADS data will be used in this manner. It's up to families and students to activate their accounts, but those accounts will be available. So you will be probably seeing a letter that has the exact language that should be provided to families to notify them of this particular use of CALPADS data. Okay. Does the CCGI notice apply to K-8 districts? Right now, the first rollout is going to be just to schools serving grades 9 to 12. But eventually it will probably include 8 and 9. So, but we'll make sure that's clear in terms of who it needs to go to.
Thank you so much, Paula. As always, your wealth of knowledge is always appreciated. There is one question I accidentally pushed that we were going to answer it live. So someone was asking, they're an independent school study. It was an anonymous attendee, and they were saying that their students are directly certified. So will those students qualify? So yes, if those students are state directly certified, then yes, but please ensure that their address, their SIMP information is up to date.
Right, but not the addresses for CDSS is coming out of CDSS. But if they're directly certified and it's actually a true match, because we do get some false positives and they truly are in the CDSS system, then yes, they will get benefits directly.
Thank you, Paula. Okay. And so for all of our SPED users at this point in time, I am going to turn it over to our wonderful information technology supervisor, Ms. Brandy Hodeggy. And for those of you that had kind of muted us for a little bit, go ahead and raise that volume back up because our fabulous Brandy is about to present.
Great. Thanks, Sean. Thanks for coming out. This is the last one. Whoop, whoop. So our in-person and virtual spring road shows. I'm not going to cover a lot of the content here today that I will be covering during the road shows, because obviously we can do it in a more in-depth fashion during those in-person and virtual spring road shows. Specifically in the road shows, we're going to talk about end-of-year reporting deadlines, auditing your special education data in your local special education data system. We're going to talk about reviewing and reporting disciplinary incidents for students with disabilities, including restraint and seclusion. We're going to go through each of the reports, talk about specific things you need to review in your child count reports, your exit reports, your post-school outcomes. And then by that time, hopefully we should have some additional monitoring reports for parental involvement, timeliness of initial evaluations. That's your 60-day timeline, as well as your third birthday timelines. We'll go over IEP implementation, data collection, and we'll talk about some changes that are coming for the 24-25 academic year. Oops, one more. There we go. So spring road shows. Here are the dates that we currently have. There's about 16 county offices that I will be visiting, some of them on the same day. You should know that the reason I wasn't able to be more expansive and have more road shows is because there's a projected budget shortfall this year. And so we had to kind of minimize the number of in-person events that I'd be going to. But we will be doing a statewide virtual roadshow on May 14th. Many of you who are on the CALPADS SPED support listserv, and that email address is at the bottom if you want to subscribe. So you send an email to that address on the bottom if you're not part of that listserv. Anyone who's currently on that listserv received a message last night with the link to sign up for those sessions. And the link to sign up for those sessions, I just had it pulled up. Sorry, folks. I will get that link right now. If Mila or Joe are on, if you guys could post that.
She'll just put it in the chat.
Marshall, you are a dog. Thank you so much. So all of that registration information is in there. If you have specific questions about any specific roadshow, there is a host contact. Please contact that person if you have questions about that specific roadshow. Obviously, I would be the contact for the statewide virtual roadshow. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that a lot of these counties are agreeing to let in-person participants come from adjacent counties, and they are also, some of them are also offering virtual sessions. So the virtual sessions, you will have to scroll over to the far right of that page, because oftentimes there are different links for the virtual registration versus the in-person registration. So just wanted to make you aware of that, but I'm hoping to see you all there. Next slide. Okay, we do have some changes coming to the end of year reports. First, we will be making a change to report 7.12, which is the student incident result list, or our incident results student list, sorry about that. And what we're going to be doing is adding a filter on that report for 504 accommodation plans. And the reason that becomes important is because as a result of AB 1466, local educational agencies annually now have to post on their websites incidents of restraint and seclusion by general ed students, students with 504 accommodation plans, and then students with disabilities. Currently, that report does not have a filter that allows you to see counts of students with 504 accommodation plans for whom you had any restraint or seclusion. So we are adding a filter to that report. Also, no longer required for end of year certification. They will be supporting reports only. Is your students with disabilities count by federal settings. So that's report 16.13. And then report 16.15, which is your student services counts. They will be available as supporting reports, but you will no longer be required to certify those. Then we've got some ODS reports that are under development, and that is to show you counts of parents who agreed that the district has involved them in the IEP process, otherwise known as parent involvement or indicator 8 for your annual performance report. Secondary transition, any of the transition indicators that we have in CALPADS, have those been included in the IEP if the student is of a certain age? It's for indicator 13. And then timely initial evaluations for indicators 11 and 12, and that's within 60 days of parental consent for evaluation or by the student's 3rd birthday if they were participating in special education on an individualized family service plan. So those are under development. Okay, the next slide is just a summary of all reports that will be required currently for certification, and which of those are certification reports and which of them are supporting reports. So we already talked about report 16.12, which is basically your child count for end of year. That is a certification report. The students with disabilities student list 1614 is a supporting report, but it's necessary in order to validate the counts in 1612. And then we've got 2 new reports, which are 1622, 1623, that are non-participation statuses. So these are your exit reports. Last year, your program exits literally only contained program exits and not enrollment related exits. These new non-participation reports will contain students that exited special education based on program exits or enrollment related program exits. So it's going to be much more comprehensive, and you can also use these reports to validate data that will be included in indicator 2, which is your dropout count. 16, 13, 15, and 16, we already talked about. Those will no longer be required for certification and are only supporting reports. Next slide. Okay, on March 5th, I held a webinar. It's Understanding Report 16.21, which are your late plan reviews and reevaluations. Marshall Isbell is that wonderful human being, is working to get that posted on the CSIS YouTube channel. So we're hoping that it should be posted. If not sometime this week, then definitely next week. Once that recording has been posted on the CSIS YouTube channel, we will send a notification out via this CALPADS SPED support listserv. So again, if you're not subscribed to that and you want to get notification when that's been posted so that you can forward the recording to your colleagues, then you want to definitely sign up for that listserv. And that email address, again, is on a couple slides preceding this. Next slide. All right, let's talk about incidents for students with disabilities. So every year, CELPAs and LEAs have to certify counts of incidents resulting in suspension, expulsion, physical and mechanical restraint and seclusion for students with disabilities. Those data for special education purposes are used for state reporting under Education Code 49005.1, for federal reporting for IDEA, and then it's also used to calculate the SPP annual performance report for indicator 4, which is your suspensions and expulsions for students with disabilities. Next slide. Now let's talk about a little bit about Education Code 49005.1. So this was a state law that was passed back in the end of 2018. And what it said was beginning 2019-20, CDE was required to collect from LEAs any instances or any incidents resulting in physical or mechanical restraint, seclusion for all students, not only students with disabilities, it's also general education students. But we've gotten lots of questions about what is mechanical restraint? What is physical restraint? What is seclusion? Well, the statute actually is very specific about what the definitions are and more so what it is not. So in the next 3 slides, we're going to talk about those definitions. Okay, so let's talk about mechanical restraint first. So mechanical restraint means the use of a device or equipment to restrict a pupil's freedom of movement. Okay, so it does not include the use of devices by peace officers or security personnel. It does not include the use of devices by trained school personnel or by a pupil prescribed in an appropriate medical or related services professional if the device is used for a specific and approved purpose for which it was prescribed, including adapted devices or mechanical supports, vehicle safety restraints, restraints for medical immobilization, or orthopedically prescribed devices. Okay, so what does that essentially mean? It means that if you have trained school personnel using a vehicle safety restraint or an orthopedically prescribed device for a student, that is not mechanical restraint. Okay, so it's being used for the specific purpose in which it was designed. But let's just say, hypothetically, not to say this never happens, but some students are getting into a fight and a staff member takes a rope that is available or a strap and holds the student down and straps the student down. That would be a reportable incidence of mechanical restraint. Okay, also, again, if there are restraints being used by peace officers or security personnel, and that includes handcuffs, those are not reportable in this particular state statute. Now let's talk about physical restraint. And by the way, physical restraints, we see the highest number of incidences of restraint and seclusion are reported in this particular category, it's physical restraint. So what does it mean? It means a personal restriction that immobilizes or reduces the ability of a pupil to move the pupil's torso, arms, legs, or head freely. But it does not include a physical escort, which means temporary touching or holding of the hand, wrist, arm, or shoulder for the purpose of inducing a pupil who is acting out to walk to a safe location. So you're moving them to a safe location. That doesn't mean physical restraint. Physical restraint also does not include any restraint used by peace officers or security personnel. Okay, so what is an example of physical restraint? Okay, let's use the example that we were using before. 2 students are in a classroom getting ready to get into a physical altercation. In order to prevent the students from hurting themselves or others, the teacher reaches out puts their arms around a student to physically restrain them from hurting themselves or hurting anyone else in the classroom. That would be a reportable incident of physical restraint because it is school personnel that is not a peace officer and not school security. Okay, let's talk about seclusion. Seclusion means the involuntary confinement of a pupil alone in a room or area from which the pupil is physically prevented from leaving. Okay, so if you lock a student in a classroom because they are acting out, they are prevented from leaving, and they are in that room alone, that is the definition of seclusion. I had an example sent to me yesterday. Well, if a teacher removes all of the other students from the classroom and it's only the student and the teacher in the classroom, is that meet the definition of seclusion? And I would say no, because in this case, the pupil is being supervised by the teacher and they're not alone in the room being prevented from leaving. Okay, so those are some examples of what restraint seclusion means, and more notably, what it does not mean. Okay, so the restraint seclusion collection is a part of a larger collection of student offenses and incidents in our end of year submission. But one thing that is really important to remember is that all incidents of restraint and seclusion should be reported, even if it does not happen in conjunction or as a result of a violation of Education Code Section 48900 or 48915. So those Education Code sections outline specific offenses in statute for which students can be expelled or suspended. Okay. Next slide. Now, in analyzing the data, we've been taking a look at this for a few years. And as you can see, the number of LEAs that have reported has remained relatively static. It's gone down a little bit since 2019-20, when we first started collecting it. However, when you look at the total number of LEAs, so 992 local educational agencies, and that is actually taking any independently reporting charters and rolling them up under their authorizing charters, just by the way. So only 291 reported any instances of restraint seclusion. That's 29.3% of all of the LEAs in the entire state. And many large LEAs, we're talking tens of thousands of kids enrolled in those districts, reported absolutely zero district-wide for both general education and students with disabilities. So just from a state perspective, those numbers seem a little anomalous. They seem like poor data quality. We suspect that in a lot of cases, LEAs are just not reporting these incidents. Next slide. So what my office was actually asked to do a more in-depth analysis, focusing specifically on restraint and seclusion data for students with disabilities. And so what we did was we looked at data over 2021-22 and the 22-23 academic year. And we further limited it by only looking at local educational agencies with greater than 100 students with disabilities, which we called large LEAs. Okay, so in 21-22, there were 811 large LEAs. In 22-23, there were 871. And what you can see by using this chart is that the majority in both of those academic years, the majority of those districts reported nothing. Okay, so in 21-22, just over 500 reported nothing. And then in 22-23, it was close to 600 LEAs that reported absolutely nothing. Okay, so we know that there's a high likelihood of poor data quality. The next slide looks specifically at local educational agencies that reported enrollment for students enrolled at non-public, non-sectarian schools, or NPS schools. And the reason that's relevant is because non-public, non-sectarian schools sometimes serve the most at-risk students in the highest restrictive environments. And so oftentimes these are where incidents of restraint and seclusion will occur, particularly because you have high risk, sometimes emotionally disturbed children that are attending these institutions. So we looked at the LEAs that reported enrollments at non-public, non-sectarian sites. And in 21-22, there were 280 LEAs that reported enrollments at NPS schools. 22-23, there were 268. And again, the majority of them are reporting nothing. No incidents of restraint and seclusion for students at those sites. And then finally, NPS schools. When we look just at the NPS schools themselves as individual sites, there were 280 in 21-22 and 268 in 22-23. Again, most of those NPS sites reported zero. In fact, the majority of NPS sites reported absolutely nothing. Next slide. All right, so there are some common issues that we believe lead to underreporting. And for students with disabilities, more specifically, I've personally talked to some special education directors who were unaware that a behavioral emergency report, the BER, as you guys like to call them, including those for those students that are enrolled at NPS sites, that those behavioral emergency reports often contain information about incidences of restraint and seclusion and even ed code violations that are suspendable or expellable, right? So those behavioral emergency reports contain that information, and the special education directors get notified of it. They may enter that information into the special education data system or into another external data system. But what is not happening is that behavioral emergency report is not making its way over to the student information system to be input, because that's the only way it gets to CALPADS. All of the discipline data, all of the incident data comes from your student information system. So you have to have a process to take that behavioral emergency report, enter it into your SIS so that it gets reported to CALPADS. Secondly, if you're working with an NPS site and you have a memorandum of understanding with a specific NPS site, what is helpful is if it is explicit and clear in that MOU, the state reporting requirements for incident reporting. What are the expectations for the NPS? What are they supposed to send you? When are they supposed to send it? Who do they send it to? Okay. So yes, it's a state law, and NPS sites should be aware that they're required to report this information to the accountable local educational agency, but we know based on the data that that's not happening. If you outline it in the memorandum of understanding, it's very clear and explicit. You have something to refer back to, and the NPS site has something to refer back to. And then finally, key disciplinary staff, including your special education directors, your ed services or student services administrators, are not reviewing the certification reports. Special education directors know when there have been incidences of restraint or seclusion, because oftentimes they've looked at those behavioral emergency reports. And so if you're seeing zero restraints or seclusions, then you know there's a problem, and that those behavioral emergency reports are not making their way into the student information system. So please make sure that all of the key individuals review the reports prior to certification. Next slide. Okay, now for general education students, we believe that there is a lack of training for school site level staff. So we're talking about teachers, individuals on yard duty, aides, principals, and they may just be unaware of what types of incidents they have to identify, document, and report to the state for general education students. There is a really clear process, and has been a longstanding process through that behavioral emergency report for students with disabilities. But do you have something equivalent for your general education students? If you don't, you need to make sure that that's in place, and more so, make sure that the staff that are supposed to be filling those forms out understand when they need to be filled out and where do they go from there. Okay, and again, making sure that all of your administrators, your relevant administrators, your special education directors review the certification reports are really key to making sure that your data are accurate. Next slide. Excuse me. So for those of you on the SPED side, your annual determination letters will be coming out on March 18th. What you should know is this year, the annual determination letter is going to include an informational section with the count of incidents of restraint and seclusion that were reported for your LEA. Okay, this year, that count and those restraint and seclusion data do not impact your monitoring tier. However, we are evaluating all of the data that we've received to date, and we will continue to evaluate the data we received this year to determine how to use those restraint and seclusion data to impact your monitoring tier for 24-25. Okay, so it's really important, and we're giving you a heads up. Let's make sure that it's as accurate as possible for the 23-24 year, so that when we're making determinations, monitoring determinations for 24-25, we're basing it on true and accurate data. So to make sure that that happens, next slide, my office is undertaking some data quality improvement efforts, and with an emphasis on this restraint and seclusion data. So what we're going to do is we're going to provide each of your CELPAs at the end of March a list of all of its member districts and all of the specific schools within those districts, and all of the restraints and seclusion incidents that were reported for each of those districts, including the counts of students, the counts of times a particular student was restrained or secluded. We're going to provide them all of that information, and we are asking them to assist us in working with those districts that look like they may be underreporting. Additionally, what we're going to do is back one more. There we go. We're going to provide more training at our spring roadshows, and we're also going to offer specific training that will be directly given to the non-public, non-sectarian administrators and site staff. So we're going to be working with our NPS unit here to make sure that that happens before end of year. And we're asking CELPA to help us communicate that LEAs have to have a process for identifying, documenting, and reporting restraint and seclusion, not only for students with disabilities, but also for gen ed students. And then also helping LEAs identify when that behavioral emergency report translates to reportable data for the state. Next slide. So if you want to find what you've reported over the last 4 years, okay, you can look in CALPADS, by the way, but CDE is also required to post these data annually, and you will find for the last 4 years up to 22-23 all of the restraint and seclusion data that was reported. So I would strongly urge you to take a look at what your district's been reporting, so you have an idea of whether or not it's being done accurately. Okay, student degree of support. So currently, CALPADS collects 2 fields. This is on the plan file, and one is degree of support 1, which is degree of support related to the primary disability, and then degree of support 2, which is related to this secondary disability. Those fields have been optional, but what I've been told is some of your vendors just have not been sending those data up. They're not even allowing them to be populated. And that's because they were optional for this year. Now, for next year, they will be required beginning in 24-25. But we did have some conversations with CTC, and we were able to get them to agree to only 1 degree of support. Okay, so rather than degree of support for their primary disability, degree of support for their secondary disability, we're looking at what is a degree of support that the student needs overall. Okay, so to that end, we worked with several lead CELPA members that helped us put together not only some frequently asked questions, but also a guiding questionnaire that helps special education staff at the local level determine whether the degree of support is mild, moderate, or extensive support for specific students with specific disabilities. Okay, so again, this is going to be required for 24-25. So should you start populating these data now? And the answer is yeah, you can actually start populating these data now. We would like only the degree of support 1 field to be populated. Okay, so I do know that we will be talking with your special education data system vendors tomorrow. And we'll be kind of going through all of this and telling them that they can start populating those data now, because what we really want to avoid is having you having to submit all sorts of amendments to try and get the degree of support in for that student beginning July 1 when the new academic year rolls over. So if you can be proactive and make that determination now for those specific students, that would be amazing. If you're looking for that guidance, it is available in the meeting materials folder. The PDF document, this was sent out to all CALPADS a couple of weeks ago. And additionally, it was given to your vendors a couple of weeks ago at the vendor meeting. Next slide. Okay, finally, we do have some new DataQuest special education reports that were developed as a result of Senate Bill 692. So it requires us to publish data on counts of students in the least restrictive environment. And it's also used as a resource on the California School Dashboard. So these are reports that are also disaggregated by race, ethnicity, and local educational agencies. And there's two reports: special education enrollment by program setting, and then enrollment by program setting with county data. One of the really great things about this report is that if you run the report at a district level, it prompts you with an additional question. Do you want to see it by reporting LEA, or do you want to see it by district of special education accountability? So viewing those counts by district of special education accountability is something that's not currently available in CALPADS. So I would strongly urge you to take a look at that. But I also wanted to throw in the caveat that these reports are not going to be exactly the same as what you certify in CALPADS. Your CALPADS reports include students with individualized service plans at private schools and infants on individualized family service plans. These DataQuest reports are only students on IEPs, okay? In the future, we will provide some downloadable files through DataQuest for students on individualized service plans and individualized family service plans, but that will be at a later date. Right now, this is only students on IEPs, okay? So just know that CALPADS reports and these reports are not always going to be exactly the same. Okay, and finally, our SPED office hours. We have been holding them every 2 weeks. So after fall 1 certification, we gave you a little bit of a reprieve and we moved them to every other week. And that will continue until May when end of year opens. When end of year opens, we're going to start holding them again every week. If you are not signed up for those, please feel free to register by going to the link that's here on this slide. Once you register once, you'll be registered for all of the sessions. And again, you don't have to attend every single one of them. You can drop in when you feel like you want to listen to some of the other questions that folks are asking, or if you have a specific question. So we strongly encourage you guys to register, and we welcome CALPADS administrators as well. All right. Couple minutes.
Brandy still welcomes me at the registration hours.
Yes,
I mean, at the office hours.
Please, we love it.
I'll take a few questions, Brandy, and then after that, we are going to pause for a quick 5-minute break. Shauna Kane, thank you for asking your question. Should we be creating a database for NPS schools specifically? My best practice at the LEA level was yes, because on the back end, again, I could do that mapping and I could ensure that the LEA, the CDS code was fully listed there, along with the school code for, I think it's 6 zeros and a 1. Yeah, because 2 is private school. Yes. So 6 zeros and a 1. So yes, that was my best practice. You'll need to discuss though at your LEA level, what's going to be the best practice for you all. And again, that depends on size, manpower, and everything else.
Right. And we will be providing the NPS sites a template for what to provide to the local educational agencies. But one of the things I will tell you that's been problematic is the incident ID. Okay, so the incident ID within your SPED, student information systems, is a unique identifier. Okay, so if NPS sites are sending you a incident identifier, it may not end up being unique with what's in your SIS. Okay, so you have to develop some sort of plan to make that particular NPS incident ID unique. But we're going to be giving this training, and we will kind of give out some tips and tricks. Okay, Anonymous at 201. If we do not have any instructional strategy code 700 courses, which means special day classes, by the way, courses that are special education setting, will the degree of support still be required? So I would strongly urge you to identify the degree of support for the students with those specific primary disabilities, just in case it does happen, just in case they're placed in some sort of special education setting. So I would strongly urge that you do that, because what's going to happen is if at some point you do have those courses and the student doesn't have that degree of support identified, you're going to get an error in CALPADS. Can you provide sample language for MOUs for use with NPS schools? I'm going to be working with the NPS unit administrator to try and do that. So we'll be doing that in the training. Wondering if there can be training on how and where we report restraint and seclusion related for general education students. Doug, I'm going to defer that one to the CALPADS office. So I'll be working on it for students with disabilities.
So yes, Doug, that is a training that I will definitely try and place out to host. It'll probably most likely be a webinar though, that everyone can attend. That will give you more information for restraint and seclusion. Thank you.
And then finally, will degree of support be reported through one of the special education files, or is it something that needs to be recorded in the SIS? And the answer is it comes through the plan file. So it's one of the files for students with disabilities. You won't have to report degree of support in the SIS. Okay.
So for our end of year 1 through 3 changes and reminders. So a list of what we'll be reviewing is listed here. For EOY 1, we'll be reviewing the college and career indicator clarifications. We will also be reviewing your student work-based learning changes, or your Weebler file changes for 23-24 and 24-25. For EOY 3, we'll go over the change in the definition for school completion status code 330. Our new and modified changes for EOY 3, again for 23-24 and 24-25, including your absenteeism, your student absenteeism data, and then also your graduate and completers. Both of these are either updates and or efforts to increase the data quality that we're seeing. Also for your cohort information, your cohort processing updates, and then also your cohort reports updates. And again, those reports are to increase your data quality. So for your college and career indicator, or your CCI, this was presented on in your fall 2 CSIS trainings that is listed there. On the LMS website and the U2 websites. You will see for the December 2023, our AMART offices, our accountability offices, released that 2023 dashboard technical guides. And I say guides plural, as because there are several mini guides within it. So it's not this one massive document that you have to search into. They separated it out by dashboard categories or dashboard indicators. And those indicators, then it made it a lot simpler to where you just need to be able to click on the mini guide that pertains to your focus. So again, there is a flash forthcoming for this, but the biggest clarification is going to be what qualifies as a for the CCI measures on the dashboard. And most specifically, so college courses that a student takes completely independently with no association or oversight by your LEA. Therefore, that course should not be reported in CALPADS for CCI measures. If your LEA chooses to place that on the student's transcript and provide credit for that, that is perfectly within your means. That should be documented at your local level as well too first. And typically that is a family-facing document, meaning that everyone knows, oh, this class will apply for this, okay? However, our most important part is if the student takes it completely and independently on their own, and it has no association, no MOU, no agreement with your school, therefore it is not reported to CALPADS for CCI measures. Page 8 of the 2023 technical guide, the dashboard technical guide, lists this out fully. And again, we will have a flash coming out that will provide this information more in detail. Also, within that flash, we are identifying for your CTE pathway criteria. Okay, what is to be considered as prepared on the CCI using that CTE pathway? And this one, again, read through it carefully. It is that capstone course within the pathway. Students must complete that capstone course. They must have a grade of a C- or better. And they must have one of these: the score level 3 or higher within that Smarter Balance assessment, and a level 2 or higher in the other categories. Or they must complete 1 semester or 2 quarters or 2 trimesters, depending on the higher institution, their structure, of that college credit course with the grade of a C- or better in the academic CTE subject, where the college credits are awarded for each course. So again, just knowing which qualifications they are for that pathway, that CTE pathway criteria. If you haven't began to talk with your CCI coordinators your CTE coordinators at the local level, if you haven't begun to talk with your instruction and curriculum coordinators or directors at the local level, this is the time to ensure that you are all in the same room and making sure that everything is project managed out and listed, so that way you are prepared to be able to capture this information and you are not waiting until graduation and struggling for EOY to get this information. Go ahead and project plan this out now. And again, students must complete that college credit courses outside of that CTE pathway. Also, for your Weebler file, we posted this in Flash 265, okay? And so within that 265 Flash, we reviewed that there is that new evaluation code listed for code 5, which states the not provided by employer. And the definition for that one, it simply states the student did not receive a rating because the employer failed to provide the evaluation, or the employer did not evaluate the student's performance at all on the internship. Okay. Ensuring that you're using that code if needed for that Weebler file, and ensure that it is attached, it is collected with those that course submission as well too. Okay. There is that validation that is fatal for 24-25. You'll receive that new DD that says you're missing for this state course code, or it's missing, or the state course code doesn't have the work-based learning embedded in it. Because this is a warning for the 23-24 school year, again, it's because we need that data first for the first school year in order to implement for the following school year for 2020, for 24-25, which again will make it fatal upon input. So if you're talking to your CTE coordinators and everything, and your instruction and curriculum, your SIS managers, then this is the time to ensure that data is flowing smoothly. Go ahead, dot your I's, cross your T's, and make sure all of your processes are in place. Again, for the 24-25 school year, it just goes into how this how this the fatal will be calculated, and again, what validations you will be seeing for it. And then also ensure that the course code must be that CTE course code. Remember, those CTE course codes are 7,000 through 8,000, or it must be one of those work experience education course codes for the 9500, 9501, and 9502. And then nextly, our CPP, it is going to your CPP, your California Proficiency Program. It is replacing your CHSPE. Your CHSPE, your California High School Proficiency Exam, that exam has ended. Although that exam has ended, it is still able to be utilized. An example is if the student took the CHSPE in the 9th grade, but they're still attending high school and they do not elect to use that CHSPE until 12th grade, then you may exit that student still. The status code, again, is going to be that 330. However, we've simply added in the CPP with the CHSPE because for some period of time, those may be overlapping for students in their use, okay, for the next few years. Again, it's key to look at when the student took the test and passed, along with the dates and also when that student is exiting, okay? And so again, if you don't have that information, please refer to one of your counselors or your school deans and making sure that that information is being brought to you, or it is everyone knows where to place that inside the SIS for students. Also, the definition for the status code 330, it will be released in the code set for the version 15.2. Currently, we're on 15.1. 15.2 will be released very shortly. Also within our forthcoming flash, yes, we got a lot of information coming out in flashes. Paul and myself and another counterpart, Jatender, have been working extremely hard at these. We are just trying to get them cleared and the information out to you. Also for the SIRS and your soft warnings, ensure that incident result 300, it is only being submitted when you have that statutory offense submitted for within your soft records. So if you do not have that ed code 48900 or 48915 submitted with this record, then you should not be submitting that 300. Okay, starting for next year, the 24-25 school year, you will see this change to a fatal. Okay. Also ensure for your new warning data discrepancies for students that have that same incident ID, but it is in 2 different schools. We are drilling down on those to ensure that that's not happening. Your incident IDs should be separate. Also, for your CELA file, your new fatal file input validation for R-STEP students who do not have that overlapping enrollment. This goes back to Flash 219. We tried to provide that guidance for you to ensure that you were being able to RFEP your students, because some of those students, you're not able to RFEP until those summer months. Once you've gotten the test scores back, you're not able to officially put in that RFEP. You know that that student might be, but once you get those test scores back, then you're able to put it in, ensuring that that date is going to tie into your enrollment date for that student. Again, typically we recommended that last date of school or that last date of enrollment for that student, match that RFEP date if you have to backdate it. However, we're saying that not typically occur sometimes, so we are putting in that GER5 validation for it. So you will see that coming up. Also, within your student absentee, we are seeing an effort, or we're trying to increase this data quality. So within that increase of this data quality, we are adding to your report 14.1. Below, you see that mock-up of the report and what this will look like. Again, for your student absentee data, it is important that your students that have 0% of absences, which we know is very rare. Okay, students get sick, parents have things to do, students miss school for whatever reasons, life. Okay, perfect, not a problem. But ensuring that you are reviewing those those zero absent total counts, and also that percentage. We are also adding a yes/no filter for the foster youth. Also, if you are not sure what constitutes or what qualifies as a foster youth student, that information is listed on our CDE website. Also, if you've downloaded the PowerPoint, you will see it listed in the notes there. The next update is for your graduates and completers. It's going to be on report 1.22 and then also on report 1.23. And you're going to see your prior academic year information for your graduates and completers, and that counts. But then also you're going to see that count difference as well too. Are your numbers increasing? Hopefully so. Yes, it is always our goal to increase graduate counts and not lessen them. If not, if you're not seeing that number increasing, typically what didn't get reported then? And so what's not correct within our SIS, and where do we need to go back and make those corrections? You'll see it, there's going to be that filter for the local exemption indicator as well too, along with your alternative diploma pathway. That letter was placed out by our SPED offices earlier this year for that school completion status of 102. Also, again, you'll see that prior academic year, so you can cross compare those counts and ensure their data accuracy. For your cohort processing updates, I will show a mock-up of this slide on, I'll show a mock-up of this report on the next slide as well too. But what we are adding is that new graduate with local exemptions, that new completion status code, again, that E230-102, and then the diploma outcome for the status and still enrolled outcome status. We are modifying your cohort SED indicator for your parent education level and that parent 2. Okay, you've been collecting the data for parent 2, and now we're just being able to display it within these reports. So that way you can see where those calculations are actually landing. Also, for your students with disabilities indicator, we are redesigning that from the SPED redesign files for the SWDS and those plan type files. Your calculation of your DSEA field in the cohort will also be listed there in the tables. And so here is a mock-up of this report and what it will look like. And it is report 15.1. It will include, yes, your UC and CSU requirements, your graduates earning their seal of biliteracy, also those earning their Golden State Merit Seal. Also, your graduates with your local exemptions. Again, your local exemptions could be your foster youth students. So knowing where those indicators are and where to look for them. Also, the new filters that are being added to 15.2, again, will be the graduate, the local exemptions and the Golden State Merit Seal, and then also that DSEA count. And that's what they'll look like there in the red. And so, as always, we are going to go through and provide our support tips and resources. I pass it over to our wonderful Angela Ratty because she has a live demo to be able to go through and give you that exciting first view and where to be able to drill down for information and not have to look so hard.
Thank you, Sean. Good afternoon, everyone. Not exactly a first view. This will be a review for some of you, but if you are new or if you are someone who has 99 other jobs on top of CalPADS. I think that you will get a lot out of this. So we're going to be talking about the end of year roadmap, as well as the checklist. We'll talk about some report mapping guides, and we'll look at the new data discrepancy screen. Okay, so to get to the end of year roadmap, on the left-hand navigation here, we have a help link, and we're going to jump to the user manual. And on the home page of the user manual, right in the middle, there is the end of year roadmap. And if we click the view details, what you'll find is kind of a bird's eye view of all the things that need to happen for end of year, all on one page. So you don't have to be, having 15 documents open, trying to cross-reference things. This is just especially if you're brand new and you're just trying to get your arms around, well, what is end of year? What do I have to do? This page is going to be very helpful for you. And I'm not going to be going over all of the links. I wanted to highlight just a few things. So we do have the calendar here. End of year will kick off on May 7th, and the deadline is July 26th. Down below that, we have some suggested milestones for you. So as of right now, you could be uploading your end of year data. You don't have to wait till May to do that. Of course, you'll probably want to upload at the end of the school year after you have your grades and graduation data, and et cetera. But you could start putting things in there now just to kind of see what kind of errors you're going to get. By July 12th, we do expect you to have no fatal errors. And the reason for that is because you can't really move on to the next step, which is send your reports out to your local data stewards for review. Fatal errors on your certification reports indicate that something is severely wrong with your data. And so it doesn't really make sense to start approving your reports until those errors are resolved. If you still have fatal errors by July 12th, the department and CSIS consider those types of LEAs at risk of missing the deadline, because if you can't jump to the next step of reviewing your reports, you're going to have a hard time meeting that July 26th deadline. So try hard to make sure you've gotten all of your errors resolved by July 12th. Right below that, we have a project management tool that I think LEAs find very helpful. It's the end of year submission checklist. You can download it here. It's an Excel spreadsheet. And we'll open it up so we can look at it together. The first tab is the milestones that we just talked about. So it's just all in one page here, or one file. The second tab is the end of year checklist. And this is a nice tool because you can fill it out. Who is responsible for all of these tasks that have to get completed in order for end of year to be successful, and also the date completed. We recommend that you download a copy of this and put it on a shared drive that everybody on your data team has access to, and start filling this out. You're welcome to customize it, add rows, add columns, colors, things like that. Maybe indicate when staff are going to be on vacation, because end of year, unfortunately, kind of overlaps with a lot of people's vacation time too. Also, if you're new, this is just probably another good check of like, okay, what are all the things that need to be done for end of year? And some of them may not apply to you if you do not serve high school students. You don't necessarily need to fill out the completer information. And then finally, on the third tab, so a place for you to do some quality assurance checking on your reports. So we list all the certification reports that are certified for end of year, and give you some key things of what to look for on each report. So if you're not familiar with CTE, say that's not part of your job, but for some reason you're now responsible for certifying this report, we'll give you some information on what to look for on that particular report. And again, I got here from the home screen under Help, User Manual, End of Year Roadmap, and the End of Year Submission Checklist.
Thanks, Angela, for reviewing that one again.
Learned over this is our last regional meeting, and everyone said, how'd you do that? How'd you get there? Try not to go too fast, but I make use of my time. Also, this left-hand navigation, these are hyperlinks, so you can kind of use it as a table of contents. So rather than having to scroll up and down, you can review some of our recommended submission strategies down here. But if you wanted to go back up, what do we recommend for the order of approval for certification and certification for end of year? We recommend you start with end of year 2 because it's kind of an easy win for your team. I'd say probably about 95% of that data is already in CALPADS right now. So it's basically just program data for students who were enrolled this school year. So that's a good one to start with. And again, I don't plan to go through all of these, but do get familiar with it and how to navigate around. The other piece I wanted to talk about today is the report mapping guides, also available on the homepage of the user manual right next to the end of year roadmap. These are reports, they're mapping guides to all of the reports inside of CALPADS that, especially the ones you are going to be certifying. So if we wanted to look at end of year certification reports, for example, they all kind of follow the same layout where basic selection criteria of how the students are, which students are included or which courses are included. And then down below, we've got a picture of the report itself, and that you'll always have these numbered columns here in the red numbers that correspond to this table below. So if I wanted to know how column 11 is being populated, I would scroll down to the table below, and it would tell me exactly what fields are being calculated in that table. Another way to navigate for the report mapping guides is under the functionality map. You could go to reports. And for this one, I'm going to show you accountability monitoring reports. For you SPED folks, we have this brand new SPED monitoring report that came out a few weeks ago. We're getting lots of questions on it, which is great. That means you guys are looking closely at the data. 16.21. Do recommend that you know how to get here, because what I like about this report mapping guide is that down below here, the most important value on that report is that monitoring category column, right? How are my kids getting counted? Are they timely or are they overdue? And if they're overdue, why are they overdue? And that's what each of these values will tell you how specifically what fields are being evaluated to determine that the student is overdue but has a pending record, or overdue, no pending record, etc. So if you're trying to troubleshoot your report, pull this up next to it so you can cross-reference and figure out what values are being populated. And then you can go look that student up in CALPADS to figure out what needs to change to get that student in a timely category. And then the last way I wanted to show how to navigate to reports, and this is the one I typically use. If you know the report number that you're looking for, you can just type it in. And so I'm picking 15.1 cohort as it ties into end of year. It's not a certified report, but this data is pulled at the same time the last certification day for end of year. So this is your graduates and completers for the 23-24 cohort. And there's lots of fields on here that you may not be familiar with, like this term still enrolled. So the student didn't graduate, but they're not a dropout. What does that mean? How did that student get counted in that field? It's column 14. And here, down here, it tells me exactly how we determine that a student is in the still enrolled category. Okay, and then the last thing I was going to present today was the new data discrepancy screen. First off, I am in our test environment, so we're not going to be looking at real data today. I'm logged in as Berkeley Unified, but the errors we're going to look at are not Berkeley real data. We last previewed data discrepancies with you last March, but it was a prototype at that point. Since then, we have done an extensive round of user acceptance testing with several LEAs and some CELPAs. We got some excellent feedback. This page is now in pretty good shape, finding it very useful. We're getting some good feedback from you as users as well. What this page shows you is your certification data discrepancies, and it defaults to fatal. And what that means is so first, let me back up. These run all year round rather than having to wait for a particular submission cycle. So let's say upcoming next is end of year 4. We don't run end of year revisions until May 7th, but I want to see what kind of errors I'm likely to get or will get if I do nothing. So if I click apply filters, I can see these are all the errors that I'm going to get that will prevent me from certifying end of year. So hey, I could get a jump start, fix all these now. And by the time end of year kicks off, I don't have any CDDs. I may have certification errors. Those are different. And how you can tell the difference is that the legacy certification errors are prefaced with the letters CERT, CERT, whereas these new data discrepancy errors always will start with the file type name. So plan, center, SWDS, etc. So this launched into production in November after our user acceptance testing. So it's been there. Some of you have found it and are starting to work on it, which is great, but we wanted to highlight it here. So for the rest of you that haven't really spent much time on it yet. The nice thing about this is it runs throughout the whole day, and it's pretty fast for most LEAs. I think the largest LEAs, it takes a little while, but just as an example, during this meeting, I came in at 1:45 and edited one of these students, and within a minute, I had a whole new set of data discrepancies. So it'll continually run throughout the day. You don't have to wait for your revision. If you have figured that out in fall 2, it's a pretty good life hack inside of CALPADS because revisions in themselves can take up to 24 hours sometimes. But if you have CDDs on, let's say, fall 2 that you're trying to resolve, most of you don't. Most of you are certified. Good job. There's a couple of you out there that are still working on fall 2. But rather than waiting for a revision, you could come here, make the edits, apply, come back 15 minutes later and make sure that the error fell off so that you know that your next revision, those errors will clear. So not all of these have been implemented for, and primarily, by the way, we are only focusing on end of year 4. There are some CDDs in end of year 1 through 3, but not many. Most of them were going to be for end of year 4. We are transitioning a lot, but not all. So even if you get this down to 0 before end of year starts, you could potentially still have the legacy cert errors too. So you will not see those. It's one little limitation of the screen, unfortunately. So the screen looks very much similar to other error report screens like view submission or the certification detail screen. It doesn't give me a total number of errors on here in the summary. I have to scroll down to the bottom and I see that I have 34 total fatal CDDs. And if I didn't know this short error message, if I didn't really understand what that was trying to tell me, I can click on the error code and it'll open up the page on the user manual that will give me some more information, a little bit of a longer description of what the error is, as well as some suggested resolutions on how to fix that. Sometimes we'll have a video even of how to troubleshoot it, and it'll be included on this page as well. You can also use the hyperlinks under the error count to filter your display grid down here. So my favorite error is center 606. We've got 10 of those. So if I click on that 10, this is refreshed to only show those 10 items now. And if you remember from fall 1, SCNR 606 is the one where I have an eligible and participating student with disabilities that recently enrolled with me, but I have not told CALPADS what my plan is for that student just yet. I didn't adopt the plan from the previous LEA, or I haven't inserted my plan yet. Alex just let me know a few minutes ago that this one is not in production yet, but I think most of these are. So you could, as of today, start looking at these, but we haven't finished transitioning all of the ones that we're going to for end of year 4. And apparently Center 606 is one of them that's still in testing, but it looks like it'll be added to production in the next week or so. But a lot of these are already in there, I know, because I've been helping users fix them. The other thing you can find on this screen is this export to CSV button. I don't find it that much helpful, but you might if you have hundreds and hundreds of errors and you don't want to work on 10 at a time. What this export will do is basically just pop this display grid into a CSV file for you. So take it or leave it, up to you. The data discrepancy error extract has a little bit more information, although it has its limitations as well. So if I I'm going to request this. I have to be mindful of which record type I'm working on. So if I'm working with on my student with disability file format errors file errors, I would have to select that file. I'm going to leave the school blank. That way it'll include all schools. And I'm focusing on my fatals at this point. I don't really want to focus on my warnings, so it defaults to that. Request file. And just like all the other extracts, you come back to this extract screen. And you can see that it's in process now. It's in queue. If I waited maybe 1 or 2 minutes, I could refresh the screen and I'll be able to download it. And it will be in the file format of the student with disabilities, because that's the one I selected. Has a little bit more information than what we saw on that display grid down here. And if I did SCNR, it would be in the SCNR file format, etc. Okay, and I just want to emphasize that there is a difference between the CDDs, the certification data discrepancies, and the legacy cert errors. So again, just to repeat myself, that even if you got these screens down to 0, doesn't mean when May 7th kicks off that you won't have any fatal errors at all. You may still have some legacy cert errors. Another tip is when you are toggling between the certification cycle, you do have to click apply filter. So if I'm going from EOI 4 to EOI 3, I have
Angela, did you mean to cut out?
no. Can you hear me?
Now I can, yes. The last 30 seconds, I think we missed.
How's this? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, you're
Oh,
good.
that was very strange. Never had that happen to me before. It just powered down my headset. So sorry about that. Where did I leave off? Toggling between the two?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so just make sure you click that apply filter button to make those changes take effect. Another thing you can look at is, I'm sure everybody knows about the error list in the footer of CALPADS. I have it open already. If I were to go to end of year 4, column E here, the error type column, there's CBR, which is the legacy errors, and then the new CDDs. So if you're curious what all CDDs are out there in the universe of end of year 4, you could filter on that and it'll show you, it looks like there's 22 of them for end of year 4. And like I said, I know all of these have not been implemented yet, but they're close. They're getting there. So keep an eye on that screen in production as those errors are getting added in the next several weeks. And the last thing I wanted to mention is all of those links that I talked about today are in the PowerPoint presentation. But I do recommend spending some time getting to know the user manual. We don't have much time today to go through much more than what I already did. But there are all kinds of nuggets of really good information in this user manual. And so get familiar with how to use it and how to search on things because you're going to find it very helpful. I typically have this document open 100% of the time. Or even as those of us on the service desk find it helpful. And that was all I had today. I think Sean has a couple more slides to quickly walk through, but you have seen them before, so hopefully we can get through those pretty quickly.
Thank you, Angela. Yes, there is one question in the Q&A. The CCE report 11.1 displays records from previous school years, whereas the CALPADS display screen only shows records from the current school year. Could someone clarify why this is so, and if LEAs are expected to address CCEs from previous school years? I don't think that wasn't in the demo that Angela showed, Shanika, but yes, if that CCE is still current, yes, you should try and correct that information if it is invalid. And so that's going to be on a student by student basis in your 11.1 reports. Also for current year data, yes, definitely so. And your LEA should have a locate scholar type of workflow. The best person to probably work with for that is going to be like your child welfare and attendance monitor, to know what processes are at your LEA specifically. And Angela Suann is just saying, wonderful job and thank you for all of your wealth of knowledge.
Thanks, Suann.
Got 7 minutes to wrap it up, Sean.
We're gonna make that 2 because we all have to hop over to the CalPADS Q&A. We are always doing double duty. Thank you, Martha, for keeping us on time. So your resources and trainings are listed here. Again, like Angela has mentioned, this is not new information for most of you. It is in the PowerPoint. Our most up-to-date PowerPoint is actually in the box folder. I posted it in there right prior to this meeting, like 3 minutes before it started. So if you grab that PowerPoint, then you should be in safe hands. If there are any updates that we need to, again, we'll always communicate that information out to you. And then nextly are always that life will of support. If you need to reach out to us, please do so via the CalPADS webpage. That is always the most efficient. Again, that CalPADS support email, that phone number that goes straight to voicemail, sorry. And that listserv information is there. And then also our next meeting. It is for May 7th and May 8th. If you have not already registered for that meeting, please do so. We greatly appreciate it. And then also it gives you that calendar reminder and invite, so you know where you need to be that day. And then any final questions or anything? I don't see any in the chat. And with that 1 minute to go, we're going to give you back the 6 minutes of time, just because most of you are probably going to head over to the Q&A too. So if you need that bio break in between, go for it. And that is it. As always, it is a pleasure to have you all. Please come back in May and we will see you again then. In the interim, if you have questions, always submit that CalPADS support ticket and we're doing our best to get them answered. Also to our counterparts, thank you. To our COO team who is in the house as well too. Thank you. It is a collaboration of a production for this. It is not a one-man show, as you can see. So yes, thank you. And you all have a great rest of your day. If we don't see you over in the Q&A, if you need the Q&A information, guess what? It's on that CSIS webpage, everyone. Okay, thank you and bye for now.